Well,
Well, I'm just looking at the ranks and I'm guessing that there is probably a disparity between Western and Eastern pros in general.
mhm.
Um, like so I kind of favor the Eastern pro and they're higher ranked and they have black.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that is now the intro to this video. I am fine with
Oh
that.
no.
That is fine. I am completely okay with that. And you've now heard, anyone who watches this later on Patreon, the predictions made by Pekoe. And I mean, it's right. Yeah, 8P versus UP. I obviously took that. However, I will say there was an upset. There was a 9 Don, oh, you mean an amateur Don player, that did recently take out a professional in a tournament, but that was like a 3P, I think they took out, not really an 8P. The question is, how does the 8P take out the 2P, who is, I mean, like, one of the strongest Western players in the history of ever? Not exactly a high bar to clear right now, but still impressive. And yeah, how do they dismantle him? What's going on? What went wrong? What went right? Let's find that out now. So we have star point into almost all the star points. Question is, what kind of game will Black be playing? Are they going to immediately dive into the 3-3 and just start being a jerk to completely dunk on their Eastern counterpart? No, in close. So okay, they're setting down and willing to play a relatively solid game. Like, yep, I'm not going to try to do weird, tricky stuff. Not going to be like, ha ha, I bet you don't know this joseki that me and all of these other professionals have studied and found the ins and outs of. Like, no, just straight up, I like these kind of games. Love them. Black says, yeah, sure, I'll build. Why not? Enclosure, build. Sure, cool. Now, here is the first part of the I don't know what he was thinking department. Pekoe, what is the one move I say you never do here?
Uh well, you often tell me not to jump out.
Correct. That is what he did. Now, do you know why we never, almost rarely ever jump out?
Cuz taking the corner is bigger than running everywhere along the board
Well, we're not really
forever.
going to be running everywhere, but we are going to be leaning everywhere. Black gets a little bit of corner territory. White says, I'm going to lean. Now, this is typically regarded as a handicap joseki. Black says, okay, I'm going to play here. And now, if White really wanted to go all in on what he's doing, he would drop down right now at R11. He instead plays here to fight back. Because this into this was briefly a sequence that was played intentionally. The idea here being this top side is not it's not secure yet because it's like fourth and fifth line off the top, right? So there's Aji here. So if White really wants to play here, okay, great, but we'll have a timing on him at some point in the future, just for either reductions or just things. He decided not to do that. White decided to pick a fight rather than back off. So Black does the reasonable thing and says, I'm going to play here now. Now, this is also one of the reasons why I picked this game, not just because of the result and how we got to the result, but this older joseki that we don't see anymore. We get to see how the 8-dan professional is going to show why we don't necessarily play this way anymore. So all of this is very, very reasonable. This one is usually here, but clearly he's looking for Sente for some reason. White kicks because he's currently afraid that this is going to happen. Now, the reason why he's afraid it's going to happen is because if this happens, it would be frigging terrible for him. Like, you'd turn here, and now those, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to be sad. Huge. How large would that corner be, actually? You know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm making assumptions. My bad. Let's see how large that corner would be. Maybe it's small. I don't know. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 5. Close enough. And then we'll probably have this, this, and this. We probably won't have those. We'll need to use those to capture. Okay, so it'd be about a 30-point corner, 45 with the bottom. No, that does seem a lot. It does seem like a lot. So we're trying to defend against that. Black says, gravy. White says, ha ha ha, I have defended myself. Many ideas here. White is saying, I'm going to defend myself. Great, fine, fantastic. White is saying, I'm defending myself in Sente, which you'll remember I always say is the separation between Q players and Don players. So great, fine, fantastic. All of these ideas line up. The only question is, did you really? Black says no. If this was actually exactly what, I'm exaggerating here. If this was precisely what White thought it was, complete defenses, nice and solid, keeping Black low, he probably win the game. Hands down, 100%. This is flippin' terrible for Black to just get like, I don't know, what is this? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 off the right, while you're giving off full board influence off the left. I mean, that's disgusting. Only problem is he didn't do that. He left cutting points. And cutting points are how Black is going to win. Because yes, he's connected, but White is disconnected. And if White's disconnected, then he has to worry about both of his groups. And that is a very tall order. It's not impossible, mind. Not impossible, but it is a headache White has to deal with. Conversely, does Black have a headache he has to deal with? Because if White has a headache and Black has a headache, I would say this position's even. But if White has a headache and Black doesn't, and he's picking up territory, then I would say this is starting to lean in Black's favor right from the start. That's very unfortunate. Defend. Defending. Now, unless a stone is killed, we have 3 things we're looking after. Black now has 1. White's still looking after more than Black, still in Black's favor. Obviously, we don't want this to be a Black move, otherwise the stones on the right are dead. That would be unfortunate. For one brief moment, Black is under attack. Fantastic. So he jumps out, not under attack anymore. White still has to look after the cutting points. So, bam. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Now it looks like White is looking after something and Black is looking after something. So this might be an even result again. Except it isn't. Do you know why? Anyone tell me why?
I think it's because White has 2 weak groups technically still, and Black just has 1.
Why 2?
Because like those two groups that were previously one group, I don't think they're going to be able to like become one group again. And also I don't think that the one like that this like M14, that's not 2 eyes. I don't think that can be like, it can still be surrounded.
Yeah, killing that is not quite 2 eyes yet, which Black picks up on and probes. White counterattacks. Because if we play here into playing here, it's not necessarily that White is going to die because you've got life. Easy, right? There, you're alive. But it's the fact that you're still going to give up a bunch of stuff while needing to live that's making you a sad person right now. So, White clearly looked at that and said, no. I don't want to be sad. I'll fight back. Only problem is, pros typically do not poke or probe cutting point unless they're really taking it. Yeah, probes probes against cutting points. Typically a scam in amateur play. Professional play? No, he really does want to kill you. It connects. Bop, bop. And bop bop. Now he has to not be dead. Great, he's not dead now. This is the part where you could go crazy and play the star point. Really start attacking. But this is so much simpler. It rejoins up black's groups because the 3 stones are dead. Puts the pressure back on white. You've got 2 groups you're looking after. I have 0. What now? It really is all about handling these cutting points. Now, white says, I have surrounded your corner, so I will attack it. Why here? Well, if we play here, this is pretty straightforward, right? We're going to probably play here and something like this, and then maybe something like this into this, maybe something like this. We're live. So he's looking for something that's not as standard to respond with. Enlarge the base. Take the 3/3. Now we're asking, how are you going to kill me? This way. Okay. Tiger Mouth here threatens an eye, or an eye and the one little Hane at L18. Oh, white says no. White says I want cuts. And connects. Now, it would be very, very easy to connect here. But once again, black is prioritizing himself above everything else. I'm just going to live. Bam, he's alive now. White is too. But who cares? So now that he's alive, 1 is no longer a threat. Because we've got, at the very least, we have A and B Miai. So, perfectly fine. The 2 group has joined up. It's completely fine. The 3 group has connected to the corner. It's completely fine. Now we could play something like something in the corner. Totally could. However, there is still a weak group on the board. Because there's a weak group on the board, poke. Because we do urgent before big. And it's really, really urgent for white to get shape here since he's almost completely surrounded by immortal groups. Forcing. Forcing. Okay. Some shape. There's potential for the eye. Reinforce it. Now, not so much. Oh, white comes out. Here is where things get interesting. Black takes, despite the fact, can't really do anything. Because you might think, oh, he did it because if we keep taking territory, there'll be like this or something, right? But right now it doesn't work. Well, that's a ladder. It does work. Hold up. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm an idiot. There we go. That's still a thing. Doot. Never mind. That's a ladder. I was going to say something completely different. I was completely wrong. Yeah. All right. Never mind. Everything I was going to say is irrelevant, I think. Can I save myself somehow? No, I don't think I can. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Ladder. My bad. I saw something now too. Forcing move. Asking about cutting points again. This might seem greedy. However, try to imagine him not doing that and connecting. The problem there is there's now more territory for black. We'd see something like this one. And that's a lot. At that point, you might even see going back and playing here because white really hasn't made any territory besides that upper right-hand corner. And that's not a good thing. The right corner for black, bottom side, huge. Picking up stones in the middle, fantastic. From that, we can, invade wherever we want. So this looks like it's a pretty one game. So he says no. Black says I insist. Because again, this game is about cutting points. We have the Atari. Not leaving Aji behind. Try and deal with the cutting point. That doesn't work. And now we've got the attack on the bottom of the board. What you'll also notice, what is this? Another cutting point. Cutting point not defended. Would jump out. We could defend it now, but the Hane at J4 is sad. So White says, I'm going to do things. Okay, now you're not. He now has bottom territory, which is very vital to his not losing the game. However, you'll notice, in true Fox fashion, it comes at a cost. Because could he have just done I don't care what to try to escape? Absolutely. Would that have meant that these stones are now dead? Yeah. That would also mean there's a new attack at A. It would also mean B is now immortal. It would also mean C is not alive yet. So you can see the disaster that's occurring here. And weirdly enough, this disaster occurred. It began here. Typically, this is not the joseki. If you want to defend, it's typically this. But here, Hane X2. So usually it's here, but it leaves this. These are the reasons, very, very simple reasons, why this joseki isn't really played. So it's very odd to see that Mr. Kravitz decided to go down this path. Because typically, professionals don't just like sit down at the board and YOLO their opening. Typically, they're going to research their opponents a little bit, kind of plan out their opening strategy to, play the kind of game that they believe is going to that they're A, most comfortable with, and B, will give them the best chance of, exploiting whatever weaknesses you perceive in your opponent. That's just what you do at a professional level, whether you're playing Go, Counter-Strike, freaking League of Legends, whatever high-level play you're playing at, that's, multiplayer, is what you do. Football, whatever. Whatever you're doing, you're researching, you're making plans, you're going in with ideas. I would assume this is a joseki that he sat down and prepared with. So it's odd to see it go so badly. Sorry. There we go. It's odd to see it go so badly for him here, given that he's presumably wanted a variation similar to this one. So we can see it went bad because Black didn't do anything weird. Defended himself. Did a poke. Wasn't lying about it. And then defended himself. Still defending himself. Still defending. And then when he had Sente, after all that defending, he's going to put pressure on something else. Then we go forward. Hey, look, a cutting point. Okay, let's kill the ladder. And now White needs to defend the cutting point, right? Didn't. Okay, then we're going to cut. And after that, it's just defending what we just did. We cut because they didn't defend the cutting point. Now it's to make sure we're as solid as possible. Same thing here. Sorry, he played this one instead. Now we're just going to surround. White has to be creative because if he just plays here, there's nowhere to go, right? You can go straight up. But since Black has not been doing anything but maintaining, solid positions, you can't really cut through this, right? So we said, all right, I need to play faster. All right, there you go. Now you could cut and go to Ko right now, or you can attempt to surround. Once again, we're back to defending. Is there a cutting point there? Yeah. Are we going for it right now? No. just defending again, making sure we're nice and solid. Only then does black put pressure on the opponent. They're fighting for Sente, which is why they're not going to Hane. Now we go up. There's nowhere to go. Still nowhere to go. This simple defense is threatening G3. Back to Ko. That is a huge move. It's threatening to kill. And at this point, there's nothing the white can do. Or nothing that, nothing white can do. Like they Hane. But all of this is dead. Like if they connect, then black can connect and just kill them. If they retake the Ko, then black can cut through and kill them. That's done. Solidly connected, very nice. Sadly, nothing's going on here. Make sure this isn't deny. Can you get an eye in the corner? Yeah, but it's only one eye, not two. So he has to resign. This definitely felt like a teaching game where black was just kind of showcasing the power of strong shape against someone who just left cutting points behind. Very, very much a teaching game. So I really, really love the simplicity of this and the lessons that it shows. And I'm glad that Mr. Kravitz played it, because without it, I couldn't have seen how Fan Yin was going to respond to this. So great opportunity to just be reminded. Solid. Pretty strong. Pretty strong. And also, at the end of the day, why we just don't do this one anymore. Very, very surprised. Yeah, showed an excellent example of why this isn't just played anymore. Any questions about this? Little bit of a short, but I think very packed full of good reminders kind of game. Were you able to follow it?
I was.
Okay, that's good.
This dragon?
Mostly. I was wondering, like you mentioned a lot about how the joseki that was initially played was the incorrect one, but if you did want, like some kind of do something to counter the influence on the right that black was developing towards with the two sets of high stones, how would you play that?
So
Because that seems to be
you
the
have to
whole
kind of back up
purpose
on
of
that thought
jumping
process a
out.
bit. Like, do you want to counter the influence? Essentially, you're referring to the fact that we've got influence here and we've got influence here. Okay, great. So this approach says you can get influence or you can take territory, because you don't know what you're going to do when your opponent approaches. They could back off. They could pincer you. They could do whatever they want. They could ignore you, yada, yada. By approaching this way, you're okay with all of those options. If you aren't, if you're saying, you know what, I really need to get rid of influence, then we're probably going to split it, do some kind of split. Probably not that one. Most likely a low one. But that also has its own drawbacks. Now, the reason why we can't just get rid of all of the influence is because this enclosure has value. So influence will be on the right if black wants influence on the right. So we approached to see what black wanted. Black said, hey, I want influence on the right. White said no. Okay, great. He can say no. If he maintains a nice solid position, it'll limit how much influence that enclosure can actually do. And this position has been played professionally. Probably not in like the last 15 years, but it has been played professionally, so it is a relatively viable option. Instead, He chose to fight. And at that point, once again, it's no longer up to him because black gets to fight for whatever black decides is most beneficial to him because, he outnumbers white locally. So there should be a little bit more of a position for black here than for white. Once again, he could have just extended, but then, yeah, it gets awkward, right? Because there's the cutting points. But there's always the cutting points unless you intentionally, defend yourself. Those will always happen. Yes, it gives your opponent stuff, but that's the kind of nature of the joseki that you kind of chose and why typically we just don't jump out here. Because we can't look at this area, decide to settle, be solid, leave no cut points, get rid of the influence, yada, yada, yada. Being able to do all of those things kind of implies that white was the stronger one here and not black, which is why they can do all those things when it was in fact the reverse. That make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, simple game, but I loved it to death. I might wind up actually allowing this game to be public on YouTube. I'm not sure because it was very, very simple, very basic-y. So you might see that at some point. Just fair warning. So either way, hope you guys enjoyed the game. And yeah,
Thank you
see you
very
next
much.
time.
Bye.